Now, I'll get started, but you guys can just listen in if you're noticing yourselves. I love this food stuff and promoted it. All right, hi everyone, welcome. Today we are going to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is other people and our relationships. And this topic that I think doesn't always get the same energy and focus as other areas of our well-being. I think we spend a lot of time on our physical health, on movement, on sleep, on nutrition. I think we think a lot about our mental health, maybe going to therapy, getting support, doing different things that we love to do, finding meaning and purpose. But when it comes to our social health, our relational health, I think hopefully what we learned today is how paramount that actually is to our physical, mental, emotional well-being and how intimately tied in it is. So it's one of my favorite topics to talk about. So I'm excited to be here to do that. And I'm excited to be back in Hamilton. I've come here, I don't know, 4 years now, maybe. I've been coming stuff heading up for the cube, and then before that it was yep. And I've come in 2 different talks on different areas in well-being. Because my background is in positive psychology. So if you're familiar with it, it's a field of psychology. And I do a few different things. I do speaking, I do training, I do coaching, I do consulting, help with organizations, support the well-being of their employees in all different ways. And if you're not, oh, I forgot about this too. I also now have a storefront where I have products, services, and development for the mind and body well-being. It's therapy, we kind of call it, and so I do lots of things. I do retreats, events, anything, any way that I can help people feel better, feel well. And that looks very different to everyone, but I try to give them as many tools and ideas as possible. But if you're not familiar with positive psychology, I always like to start out with giving people an overview of what this field is. Where traditional psychology for a long time focused on diagnosing, categorizing, and treating an estimate of what can go wrong and mental illness, nobody was necessarily studying what can go right or how do we get above just out of illness. So if you're not depressed, if you're able to treat depression, that's wonderful and needed, but it doesn't even have to. It just means you're not depressed. And so we were kind of getting people up to possibly a neutral point, which is where northbound comes from, because the idea is how do we move people north of neutral? Why aren't we studying, diagnosing, categorizing our strengths and what can go right? And also, you can have a diagnosed mental illness and have great well-being. I have a diagnosed anxiety disorder. I have for a long time, but I believe a really great sense of well-being and happiness because I've learned a lot of ways to do that. Vice versa, you don't have to be categorized with a mental illness to not be well and not to feel good. So it's kind of these things work together hand in hand, but they're all of this line is related. And a lot of this work comes out of the University of Pennsylvania, where it started. Martin Seligman was the president of the American Psychological Association at the time. He said, why are we only studying illness? Why are we not focusing on other things to have a sense of well-being? How do we live well? Some people call it the science of what makes life worth living, or the science of happiness, which I think is a little too narrow. Well-being is more than being happy. There's a lot more. And actually, his model of well-being said that there's kind of some key areas that if we focus on, we'll feel better. One of them being positive emotions and how our mindset works, the way the lens through which we see the world. Not about being positive all the time. We should have all emotions. They're all good. They all have value. Engagement is how connected we are to the world around us. How often we get in the flow states and we really highly involved in what we're doing, how mindful we are and engaged in what's happening. Ours kind of in the middle, and that's what we're going to focus on today, is relationships, and they are crucial, absolutely crucial to our well-being. Meaning and purpose, and also accomplishment. Not in this, we need to get these successes on our plate and then we can be happy. That's actually a very backwards equation. We're happier, we're more likely to be successful in all the ways that we want to meet our successes. But that it's the things that we didn't do in life that we regret more than the things that we have done. So accomplishment is important because those goals and those things that we wanted, that book we wanted to write, that side business we wanted to start, that marathon we wanted to run, whatever it is, those things are meaningful. And so accomplishing them also supports our well. And I call this session Other People Matter. This term comes from Chris Peterson. He was one of the founders of the field of positive psychology. He passed away at a relatively young age of a heart attack. But he was a professor at the University of Michigan, and he said, I can sum up this entire science in 3 words, and that's other people matter. And we know that, we can feel that, we can feel how important relationships are. But I think when you see some of the research behind it in the cloud, that's really important. And maybe I wasn't prioritizing that for a myriad of reasons, in the same way I was other areas of my life. And so one of the biggest places that we've developed information around this concept is one of the longest studies of humans in history. It's called the Harvard Study of Adult Development. A lot of times with studies, the participants drop out, the directors drop out. It's now in its 3rd director, and it's been going since 1938. And what it did is it looked at 2 groups of people. It looked at impoverished boys in Boston, and it looked at Harvard students. And it followed them throughout their entire lifespan, now and having kids and grandkids, and even following those kids. And they looked at all these areas of life to figure out what does make life worth living, what is meaningful to our health, our mental health, our happiness, and our well-being. And what they found from all these years of research and things is that good relationships are the single biggest correlate to our happiness and well-being and longevity in our health, and physical health, how long we live, period. Relationships are good for us. And I think when we're busy and overwhelmed and sometimes only connected by devices, a lot of this, as I was talking about, what's your name? Sorry, mouthful, which one's accident? Yes. Yes, thank you. Talking to Josh, she said she read a book around some of these topics, that the more disconnected we're being, the sicker we're getting, mentally, physically, because of this busyness. But this is important. So they learned that social connections are good for us, and that loneliness kills, that well-connected people live longer. It's not the number of friends or if you're in a committed romantic relationship, it's the quality of the relationships that you have. So it doesn't mean you need to have 100 relationships. It's a couple good ones are going to buffer you. Good relationships don't just protect our bodies, they protect our brains, so that later memory decline if we stay connected. And the quality of our relationships really are one of the biggest correlates to our happiness, to feeling good. And I'm sure even for introverted, many of us have different styles. Some of us are introverted and need more time alone. Some of us are extroverted and we feel by being in connection. Regardless of your introversion or extroversion, we need other people. We're wired to be in relationships. And so I'm sure most of the memories you look back on, some of the best times in your life, some of the happiest times, some of the things you're looking forward to doing, have other people. They're important. And so there's a great TED Talk, it's in your paper, you can watch it. This is the director of that study. This has been viewed, probably way more times than when I originally did that slide. He said it 41 million times. But he said what makes, it's about what makes a good life. And it's about this study. And loneliness kills. It's as powerful as dangerous as smoking, being lonely, or alcoholism. So we think of these things that we do for our physical health to live longer. Think of other people, that's so important. And I think when we were during the pandemic, and sometimes we forget that we were in this lockdown stage, I think the biggest lesson that everyone was shaking their head, what do you think? Like during the pandemic, that's what it starts. Yeah, it's the isolation. We were craving physically, I think craving that connection and realizing how important the most trivial experiences are of just gathering with your family for dinner. I remember the first Easter that I wasn't with my family, and I was just staying home with my nuclear family and just, it's as simple as they don't do anything that special. They just come together and eat some food and the kids play, and that's everything though. And I think this really helped us see that, and I think the farther we step away from that again, we're creatures of habit, and we are really used to things, so now we're kind of used to just being normal again, normal quote unquote. And I think it's good to even have these reminders, like, yeah, remember how tough that is? And in the pandemic, when you couldn't hug and talk to people, and we were talking through windows and that. So then you've gotten a lot more of the blue zones. I don't know if anyone's seen, there's on Netflix special about the blue zones. I don't know if anyone's familiar with these. We've gotten a lot more press as of recently, this Netflix special. Blue zones are areas around the globe where they have the largest concentration of centenarians. So people over 100, the largest concentration of them. So places where people live the longest. And there's one in California, there's one in Costa Rica, one in Italy, one in Greece, and one in Japan. And they have lots of things in common. Certainly diet, maybe more of a Mediterranean diet, plant-based diet, movements more integrated into their lifestyle, not that they necessarily exercise, but they walk a lot, their work is a little more movement oriented, but all of them also have social connection until old age. So not just as you age, then you're sent away. They have powerful social connection and are almost more connected as they age. One of the examples is in Okinawa. They have less cancer and less heart disease and dementia than any Americans, and the women there live longer than anywhere in the world. And they maintain a powerful network called WHY, or Meeting for a Common Purpose. And I think they originally started around finances or something, but it's been ingrained in their tradition. And this group of people that celebrate your successes with you, that are there for you in hard times. I really believe relationships equal resilience. If I was to say what I think relationships do for us, they make us resilient and strong to have other people. They make us happy. They feel good, and we can know that. So I'd love to take a moment for us to connect and talk about relationships. I shouldn't be talking. So I'd love for you to find a partner, and all you can do is all talk to each other. Just share something good in your life right now. I'll give you about a minute each. Something simple. It could be, I was joking, but like, avocados can be right today. Oh, also that day, right? This is the right, it's hard, it's very elusive. So anything, something good, what's good, find a partner, about a minute each. What's good? You hear what we're talking about?
Oh, yeah. Good weather for now. Yeah.
But it's good.
Everybody today.
So it's great.
Everyone's feeling a little connected. I love this question. It's a great way to do meetings, team meetings, and I to start by focusing on the good. A lot of theory and positive psychology around this negativity bias that we're all wired with. And so it keeps us safe, but we're not really, we're not wired for happiness, we're wired to survive. And so we focus a lot on that and what's wrong and what's hard and it's scary because it kept us safe. And if we don't take time to actually intentionally put our focus on the good, we're going to miss a lot. And so it's the same with appreciates. And so I would love whenever I do this activity, if I do a gratitude activity, the energy, like the flow of energy in the room is always different, like people just all focusing on what's good. And just a little connection goes so long, like such a long way, so. Glad we had a chance to connect for a minute, and we'll get back to a little more of this in a second. I'll share something that I think will like. So why are relationships so important? We know it feels good. We know most of our key memories are associated with other people. We know it's in one time that we do know other people, but really we're connected to, we're biologically wired to be in connection. We want it to be, that's how we stay on the groups. If it's to be out on a plane, it's much more dangerous than meeting people to help share resources and ideas, protection even when it comes to different dangers. So we're wired to connect, to belong. We all feel that way. You know, anyone thinks back to middle school and that this innate wanting to fit in. I mean, that's what we all have, this wanting, needing to belong, kept us in the in group. To matter, to have purpose, and to work towards something greater than ourselves. This is all kind of this common good. We're a collective, tribal, communal society. And so it makes sense that as we get more insular, that we're still craving that, even though our modern day conditions are always meeting up with our biological wiring. I think this is also one of the reasons why you see not only people that have this, but think of the military when they're on a mission somewhere, to connect, to belong, to matter, to have purpose, to work something towards something greater than themselves. I think a lot of the mental health struggles when people come back from deployment is not only the trauma that they maybe experienced, but being removed from that connection, that belonging, that purpose, that group. Is really, I think, part of the struggles of coming back from the deployment of that. So why are we trying to connect? That can enable our survival. Our ancestors need to procreate to continue to carry on the human race. The bond between a parent and child ensures the child's survival. And between mates also helps guarantee that a unit, two people to help support. And I'm sure in every tradition, it's not always just two mates and a child. It's all sorts of, connection raising children. But bonds help raise children and keeping them surviving. And so these relationships really meet this core brain need, where we hunted together, we shared food together, we fought off enemies together. And so we have this desire to be together. And now the world's looking very different. And I think, although I don't want to say technology, I'm on a screen right now, other people can witness what I'm doing. There's a connected element to technology. There's also a disconnected element to technology. And I think when it runs rampant, you can see some of the effects of the disconnect that we have. More and more, we're replacing these in-person connections, even real phone calls, with quick texts, social media comments. We're less present when we're in relationships because we're pulled to our devices, whether it's for work or personal or whatever it is we're being pulled. We're disconnected. We have 50% less people in the kitchen than just 10 years ago. Our gathering place where we eat, we come together. And nowadays, our social capital maxes out around age 25, that's when we have the most connection. And as we age, we become more and more intimate, get into our own family units, and less of those kind of group dynamics. And we're currently in the loneliness epidemic. The UK has appointed a minister of loneliness a couple of years back. There's really significant effects on this isolation that we're experiencing. Few other stats, 3 in 5 people report being lonely. That was in 2024. I'm sure those numbers were even higher. That was up from 1 in 5 in 2018. And loneliness is felt in the same center of our brain as pain. It's likely adaptive to keep us connected. But anyone who's been really lonely, who's been, even in a group of people, lonely, anyone who's been really lonely knows it's painful. It's painful to be lonely. And it increases cortisol levels, it increases, which affects everything, our immune function, our heart function, inflammation, which makes sense that people that are connected live longer. We've been looking at some of these kind of inflammatory effects of being lonely. And I think one of the biggest things we're seeing, there's actually a new book coming out around kids that have been growing up with the tablets and phones that's out of the womb. I think one of the single biggest things we're seeing is spikes in anxiety rates. Since the advent of the cell phone, humongous spikes in anxiety. I think part of it is because we're more disconnected, even though we're connected. I think part of it's about social comparison with kids, and there's a bunch of different mechanisms, but anxiety rates are skyrocketing for kids and adults alike. And this is, I think, one of the theories that I think the reason why some of this also is happening is because when we're in connection, when we're holding hands, cuddling, hugging, in an intimate conversation with somebody, we release oxytocin. Oxytocin is a neuropeptide that is called like the color hormone, or it releases a calming effect when we have oxytocin. When I first taught my kids that when I hug them, that we release oxytocin. I remember my daughter was little, I'd hug her and she'd go, oxytocin. And which is true though, because then you're a cuddle, you can feel that kind of sensation. It happens with dogs and pets, having a dog or a cat or an animal, and prayer and partner dance. There's so many times when we release this, but it's usually with other people around us. And it makes us feel safe. It releases the common connect response, which is the opposite of the fight or flight response that we're constantly in all the time. So I think one of the reasons why anxiety rates are higher is because we must physically connect with people. And we have less oxytocin. So I love this quote. Dr. Paul Sachs says we need 8 hugs per day to feel happier and healthier. It's a good quote. I know we don't all have 8 people to hug. You can hug the same person multiple times. And even if you don't have someone to hug, there's a technique called havening. It's you can use it for a self-soothing technique. It's also used to work with trauma. And you can do certain like movements. Some people may be more familiar with tapping, but there's this one. There's one where you can go like this. And under your desk, you can even go like this. And it's a self-soothing technique. So if you don't have someone to hug, I was teaching this a lot during the pandemic because just these small movements of touch on yourself and crossing the meridians, there's a whole, I'm not a human practitioner, I won't deal with it, but like, it's very soothing. And so you can't hug someone, you can just hug yourself a little bit, but I recommend hugging this technique. So, social connections buffer stress, which can adversely affect our arteries, our gut function, our insulin, the immune system. And I love this quote by Brene Brown. Who doesn't really love Brene, if you know her? She says, "A deep sense of love and belonging is an irresistible need of all people. We are biologically, cognitively, physically, and spiritually wired to love and to be loved and to belong. When those needs are not met, we don't function as we are meant to. We break, we fall apart, we numb, we ache, we hurt others, we get sick." And every time I read that, I'm thinking, yeah, that's so true. We need other people. Again, other people matter. So there's lots of things that affect our relationships. One of them is they call them high quality connections. So not every relationship becomes good. Some of them, I'm sure, as we all know, we wish we maybe didn't have. Some of them we're born into. Some of them are colleagues or people that we have to get along with. But what makes a good connection? They experience positive emotions together. Not just experience sad moments together, but they experience positive emotions together. They can talk openly and vulnerably. They give and receive support, shared activities or experiences. All of these things build quality connections, which are not, again, the same as quantity connections. So I'm going to teach a couple of strategies for us to work on strengthening our relationships. My first one being my probably favorite thing I teach at almost anything I teach, which is called active constructive responding. We're gonna talk a little bit about trust, which is really important to understand. And this idea of emotional contagion, that not just our germs are contagious, our emotions are contagious. As we all know, I'm sure we've seen that happen many times. So people walk in with a certain disposition and how that affects us. So the first thing I want to teach is active constructive responding, but I'm going to teach it by demonstrating. So would someone be wanting to be my demonstrator? Oh, all right. I'm going to ask you what's, we just shared what's good. I'm going to ask you what's good. You can share the same thing that you already did, or you're ready for that one, or you can share something else. Okay. So, what's your name?
Megan.
Megan, what's good?
So the weather and kids being able to play outside more and not so much of the tablet TV time.
Cool. Cool.
Yours?
So, what I'm doing there is passive constructive responding. Passive constructive responding. We do this a lot. People share good news and they're like, awesome. My kids will come home, they like come at school, I'm trying to make dinner, and they're like, Mom, I did blah blah blah, I'm like, awesome, love. And then I just move on. Passive constructive responding, I'm bad. We just are like, cool. Yeah, like, so that's what I was thinking. All right. Sorry, what's your name again? Megan, I knew that. Megan, what's good?
The weather.
Do you want a different answer? Say it, use it all, weather.
The weather and being able to play outside.
I had the most beautiful day the other day too, and my kids were all outside and they were like playing and enjoying the weather together, and the kids riding their bikes. It was so great. So that one is when it's passive destructive. It's not me, but now I'm turning it about on myself. So how many times does someone share an experience and you're like, oh, well, I did that too, like, and we turn it around to ourselves. So it's not necessarily, it's not bad, it's not great at all, but it's not, we're not trying to squash anything, but we're also just like turning it on ourselves. Okay, Megan,
Conversations are hard.
yeah, Megan's good.
What is good?
Well, don't get too used to that, because I don't know how much budget stuff has left over. It's New York, it's probably gonna be cloudy too. And kids are computers, so just don't get used to any of this stuff. But it's active deconstructive responding. When people share something good, we're like, well, don't get too used to that. And we have those people in our lives, right? People that are just like, we tell them something good, and they're like, whoa, don't get used to good. All right, let's try one more time. Good.
Oh, that's good. Let's see. I did have a perfect avocado smooth guacamole last night.
Oh, what did you think?
I mean, black, and we just did like chips and dip.
Oh, did you do a lot of like block and chip and dip nights, or?
It was just a crazy night last night.
A crazy night. Oh, I like the sound of that.
Chips and crackers and cheese, and then we had some leftovers.
Was that kind of like a cook's vibe?
Actually, I think that's next late in the clip, so then we just were like, oh, we just freeze for the evening.
I love a good crazy night. That's something. Yeah, well, you shared both of us, so we do, but. That is an active constructive responder. She shared something good, and I asked my questions. I got involved. I was very attentive. I helped elongate her experience of the good. Usually, people show up for us for the bad. We are kind of uncomfortable when people are sad, to be honest. This is part of it. But we want to help. That's our nature. So when people are sad, we're like, what can I do? We hold space for them. We hug them. When people share good news for us, we don't necessarily give the same energy, and it's actually the people that celebrate us in times that are good that we feel more connected to than the people that show up for us in the bad. Because the people that actually think about it, your champions, your cheerleaders, the people that you feel super connected to, that you know want the best for you, are going to celebrate you and ask more and be interested in your life. One of the easiest ways you can do active responding, active constructive responding, is when someone tells you something good, you can say, what's your favorite part of that? Or, oh, what was that like? Or just ask an attentive question. It wasn't hard for me to think of more questions when you said that. I'm just like, oh, yeah, I'm doing nothing else. And oh, this is having the eclipse. And oh, what else did you know, like little things. And I got to, and it's not only good for them, it's good for you. We'll talk about emotional contagion in a minute. But the more we can elongate and savor these small experiences of joy with another person, the better it feels for both parties. So it's a really powerful, really simple thing. When your college shares something, if you have children or nieces or nephews or anyone that's like, yeah, I did this cool thing. If you really pay attention and ask a few questions, you'll be amazed if you learn. You'll get amazed at the response. And this is one of my favorite things to teach because people think they're being connected when they turn it on themselves. And then I've done it many times, you're like, oh, I want to relate. So I'm going to talk about how I've been to be similar. Not as powerful as just asking questions, being curious, and elongating the joy. So studies show that it is good for both participants, like on both sides, it increases both people's happiness up. Well, this one actually, I think this is, good for both. So increases both people's happiness level. It even can help with depressive symptoms in people. And again, it's that focusing on the good and being able to actually put some attention to it because we just don't in default a lot of times. We're worried about getting things done. We're worried about the next thing. We're worried about stirring the spaghetti sauce for dinner instead of really paying attention to what my kids did. It's really cool. And it's not that, I do it every time, but I'm so much, you just learn this little tool. I'm so much more conscious of this process. So, put that one in. Hope that's a good one. The next thing is understanding trust. And I think we all intuitively know that we don't feel connected with people that we don't trust. But we might not know how to put our finger on it. And we all know situations where we've broken trust in other people. And so what are the reasons for that? And so there's a trust equation by this man, Charles H. Green. And he says that you want to have these things on top of the equation, pi. What is that? Your numerator on some top, your denominator? And now people, your numerator on the top, and then denominator on the bottom. So we want a high numerator. And so the first thing is we need credibility. If I came in here and said, I'm going to talk about positive psychology, but I never studied positive psychology ever, you might be like, well, maybe she has the right experience, but I don't know if I don't necessarily know what she's talking about. So same thing with like uniforms, diplomas, a police officer has a badge for a reason. He's credible because that's his badge, so he's a police officer. So you need credibility, reliability. This is a big one. Saying, doing what you say you're going to do, showing up on time, delivering that thing you said you would do. If you keep telling your friend you're going to meet them for lunch and it just never happens, or you keep canceling, they're not going to start to trust, and that's actually going to happen. And intimacy. Intimacy is like vulnerability, disclosure, being open, opening your heart, listening, just kind of this sense of connection that you have with another person. Divided by self-orientation. So this is just your, it's all about me factor. So if everything's all about you, certainly you want to have a sense of self and have boundaries and things that are important to you. But if it's always all about you, if I came up here and talked all about myself, the entire time I sit up here, I'm kind of like, who is this woman? Why is she talking about herself? But if I come up here with I got here in time and brought the things to staff that she keeps having me back because she must cross, so I'm going to keep coming back. And that I'm not going to talk, that I'm going to be vulnerable with people and create connection and not be all about myself. So usually we can see maybe one of these areas that we could work on for ourselves. So maybe it's reliability. I'm so terrible with timing. I never get there when I said it. That might be a way to strengthen trust with someone else in your life. And also you might look at this and be like, oh, that's more of that person. Something was off, and I didn't feel that sense of trust. And so I think this is just a good thing to do. I don't know if it's necessarily an action you have to take. I really try to be, one of the biggest things in my own business is really trying to work on that reliability piece and delivering what I say I'm going to deliver. Oh, who did you get one? Did you get one back here? Okay, here. You're welcome. I really try to strive for that middle piece of being reliable and actually delivering what I said I'm gonna do on time when I say I'm going to do it. I actually one time tried to create these little slips. I thought I don't know, this is good. I don't remember who he was. He was maybe like a business leader. And he had these little slips, and whenever he promised somebody something, he'd write it on the slip, almost like a promissory note. And he'd check it out because he felt like, so I started to do that for a while. I had these little slips because I was trying to govern somebody's payment that I really want to deliver what I said I'm going to do. So there could be creative ways to work with this. It also can just be an awareness of, yeah, that person is unfortunately has one too many times. Show them that I can't trust them, and maybe they're not going to relationship. And that's the part of it. Some of that is really hard work too. So I'd love to just pause for a minute and give you a second to pause to prioritize a relationship with your life. You can do a couple things. You can send a quick hello or a friend to someone in a text message. Maybe think of someone you've been meaning to reach out to and want to send them a page. I want to do that one strong that I said I keep saying I'm going to do. Is there an area of that trust equation that you feel like, yeah, if I'm really honest with myself, I'm not always very vulnerable. I'm pretty closed off, but people don't feel that connection because I haven't opened up. Or maybe just think about an activity you'd like to plan with somebody or time you want to set aside. So I'm just going to give you, I don't know, 2 minutes to think about that. I feel like I should have some music. I'll give you a minute. Like I said, send a gratitude text, or look at your calendar, write yourself a note, whatever it is. Maybe another 30 seconds to wrap up that thought or text. Does anybody come up with a good idea? Anything you want to share? Send a note to someone or? What you got back there? You think good?
I just sent a nice little gratitude to myself.
I love that. Yeah, it's just a little positive to like, to do something like that. And, you know, I think we prioritize it. Okay, I'm gonna go to the gym at this time, or I'm gonna meal plan, I don't think we necessarily give relationships that kind of, unless there's play sometimes. Then we are like, oh, I really need an active date night or go to counseling or. But I think these things can be done, and this doesn't have to be in any type of relationship. Whether it's, with a parent or with a child, with a partner, with a best friend, with a neighbor, with a colleague. All of these things are, just having just a small amount for so long with relationships. And and prioritize. All right, and the last thing I want to talk about is emotional contagion. It's fascinating stuff around emotional contagion. It's this idea that we tend to catch the emotions of others. And we sync up, we mimic facial expressions, vocalizations, postures, movements. So if your friend walks in, they're like, people where they are. If someone walks in and they're like, this, I'm like, hey, how you kind of come down to where they are. We sync up. We have even mirror neurons that fire at the same time when we're in conversation, and they fire in anticipation. And so even little micro gestures of our faces sync up, and to stay kind of connected like that, and we're very synced. And so we all know if we're in an office environment or work environment. Anyone here, probably most people here have been in some level of toxic, unhealthy work situation at some point, where just you walk in the room or the office every day and someone's pissed off, and it's just a contagious energy that goes from person to person to person. Or you work in a really great place where you walked in and you feel that good emotion, and it's same thing. You go to a restaurant and the server is miserable, or you go into a restaurant and the server is amazing and excited, and you start to mimic that energy and feel it. We sync up. One of these things is called the facial feedback theory. That's where I said we have these like little areas of our brains that are lighting up at the same time, and even little movements in our face are syncing up. Same thing with the mirror neurons firing. And you can even see clusters of emotional contagion, and where you can see on this map where they've studied with the people and happy people being in the same areas together. There's that saying, what is it, where like, we are the expression of the 5 people we spend the most time with. And that's really true. The more people we spend time with that are uplifting and feel good, we feel good. The more people we spend time with that are just can't get out of their own way. And I will say to have a little compassion for if maybe that's you sometimes, or if that's people that we know. A lot of that is genetic. And you found that kind of 50% of our kind of set point of happiness is genes. Like we kind of, anyone has been around young babies or has children, you know when a child comes out. I have 2 kids, a son and a daughter. And when my daughter came out, she was just such an easy disposition, happy kid. I'm like, wow, I'm really good parent. Then I have a son. There's a fish together. Because he did, he came out, I was like, I have to be loud. He's like, he's very sensory. He's got to be, everything's got to be just right for him to be a certain way. The daughter could care less about you. She's very young. Him, I try to take him to friendlies, it's like a tactical operation, and I have a few stickers. I'm in the putting books, or running over the child, I've never seen, it's we're born with a disposition. So if someone you know seems to be always negative, some of that is genetic. It's kind of and environment, and if that's you, where you're just always see the worst in things. Again, some of that is genetic. We can change, there's epigenetics where we can change our gene expression, and through exposure to things and environment, we can affect it. It's not just a thing. But I like to have sympathy also for, not even sympathy, empathy is the word I'm looking for people that don't have the easiest disposition. I think I'm in the work I am because I can easily see the brighter side of things. Not everybody can do that. So I think we have to give people some grace, but we also have to understand people's emotions are going to affect ours. And so I think this works 2 ways. I think if we want the people around us to be in better moods, the better mood we're in, being that energy that we want around us and prioritizing our own well-being, self-care, mental health is important because it's going to affect the people around us, and vice versa. Surrounding ourselves with people who are reflective of who you want to be and how you want to feel, because of energy that are contagious. So it goes both ways. I think it's really important to think in both ways. And I often think of, even when I cut up an apple, and how many times my kids while I'm eating that apple will just come grab a slice of that apple, rather than if I just have apples there. Because I am being the energy and like eating the apple, I'm being with, they're like, oh, mom's eating apples, I'm gonna eat an apple. Same thing with emotion. We show up in a room and we're in a good space, we've been taking care of to the best of our ability, ourselves, and we come in a good way, people are gonna feel that. And it's gonna be contagious to those around us. So I like to model things more than tell things. I mean, again, these are something, but I think that's it. So instead of putting it into practice and things that you can kind of on your sheets, take with you. Maybe start to think about some relationships that are really important to you, but maybe could use a little bit more energy. Whether it's, oh, I really told this person so many times that I was going to do something and I haven't. Sometimes people stop inviting us and we start, they keep inviting and I'm busy and then they stop asking. So maybe there's some relationships that can use attending. Is that constructive responding? It's gonna be fun. You're gonna be, oh, that really does work. I promise it works every time. People get excited. They're like, oh, you're asking me more questions. They love it. Like, it feels good. And my kids, especially, whenever I'm really present to them, that's all I think to be as a parent is present. I think it always comes back to that. Work on recognizing the toxic region in yourself and seeing that, yeah, I can probably be honest that I need to show up a little differently to have a better relationship. And keep that emotional contagion around. Because when you walk in, people's emotions will follow, and also picking rooms that you want to walk into. There's so many, the people that feel good in your life. Maybe prioritize those relationships. I always have some suggested readings, which we're going to put this other one on the list. But Big Potential, these are all books based in positive psychology. Big Potential, there's an author named Sean Aker. He wrote The Happiness Advantage, was his idea about how if we're happy, we're more likely to be successful. When we think it's the opposite, if we're successful, then we get to be happy. But then he wrote a second book that said, actually, not only if we're happy, we're more likely to be successful, but if we're doing it with other people, we're more likely to be successful. So he brings in the other people. Love 2.0 is a great book. By Barbara Peterson. She's a researcher out of the University of North Carolina. She has a positive emotion plan there. And it's about these micro moments of connection with anyone, strangers, whoever's doing the A, B in the back. What's your name?
True.
Drew and I had a little micro moment of connection. We all had a micro moment of connection. And little deposits of those throughout the day, someone on the subway, or someone in a class, or someone on the treadmill next to you. I mean, these little micro moments of connectivity, she calls it positivity resonance, have a big impact on our heart rate variability, on our physical health. So it doesn't even have to be these long, term relationships. Micro moments of connection with other people go a long way. And Happier Together is about romantic relationships and using positive psychology lessons to strengthen those. So those are on your paper as well, some suggestions. I always have a little section for an aha or a commitment. We sit here for an hour, so maybe you want to make a commitment to yourself, but not to me. But I love a good little commitment, like I'm going to try to actively constructively respond when I get the the score. I'm going to try to prioritize the daily, whatever it is. And just curious, I always love to hear, is there any moments during this you're like, oh, that's an aha moment, I never really thought about that. Anyone have an aha that they heard today that was like, it really struck me. Did you have everything?
Wonderful.
Oh, good.
For something like great, but to try each other,
Yeah, I think the relationship plan is so like, it makes, none of this is really like new in a sense. It all is very intuitive. Like this all makes sense. Like, we all know what it feels like to be in a relationship, and all of these things make sense. It's just pausing and having a chance to reflect on this stuff again. I would go back to the word aware. The root word of aware is where, which means tool. So you have software and underwear, silverware, aware. I like to think of it as its own tool, like a tool. It's like just being the awareness that relationships are that important to our health and our happiness and our longevity. And if that's all you walk away with today, I'm psyched. Always just trying to plant little seeds of something. So I hope that this was helpful. And if you want to stay connected, I do all sorts of things. I have Instagram both for my coaching, consulting, and training, which is the head_Northbound. My shop, if you're ever in Syracuse area, come visit. I do events, all sorts of things there, products and brothers and such there. Things you can look in the sun. And then Facebook as well. I have one for each. I'm on LinkedIn. And then I also, over the last year, started doing retreats, actually. Steph is one of my retreats with her sister. And I have a group, 2 other women we do that with called Root to Rise. And we've been doing this place called Gander Camp in Cleveland, New York. Day retreat, affordable. You just want to get away for a day. We're doing them quarterly. And we do memberships and different things because people, we realize the biggest thing is that people are lonely when we have different monthly events and people tell us, like, I'm in a friendship desert, or I just feel like I'm surrounded by people, but I don't feel connected to the people I'm around. So lots of ways to stay connected. I'd love for you to follow along in anything, visit me in Syracuse, come to retreat. Hope you stuff, keep asking me back for free lunch. I love it because I get good attendance with definitely these people, and it's a win for all of us. Feed them, they will come. So thank you so much. I'll take up here for questions if anyone has anyone, but it's so great to be in connection with all of you that people do.
I remember that call that came in last minute, so I was like trying to write it down. Sure. Oh. Close.